is that I would encourage you to not think that you have to find everything in one mentor, but that you seek a variety of mentors, and perhaps based on the different parts of your workflow, or based on, some maybe here, some maybe in other, in your own department, in another department, in another college, just depending on how many hats you're wearing and how many fields your research takes you to, and so on. And secondly, I would say, especially to younger faculty or faculty who are in the earlier stages of their careers, that you don't be afraid to ask for advice. And we've talked about this a lot on the committee, that why is it that more effective mentoring isn't taking place? And I think that one of the reasons is that younger faculty don't know how to ask, and more experienced faculty, more senior faculty, don't know quite how either. And speaking from my own position, I don't know for sure if another faculty member would appreciate my advice. So I would urge you to ask, and I think that other faculty members would love to offer advice and help you out. Thirdly, with regard to research, I would really encourage you to figure out what really excites you, and figure out how you can get there. And then carve out time for that research, because I think we all recognize that the problem with our research is that it falls to the bottom of the list because everything else has a deadline. For teaching, we can't show up in class and say, sorry, I'm not prepared. I was working on this amazing research I'm doing. And even with service commitments, you've got to be there at that time. So our research falls to the bottom. And I would just urge you to create a schedule for yourself, and even set deadlines for products or for timelines, for getting partial products done, so that you make sure you have time for that. Fourthly, and this relates to the mentoring and to the research, it relates to everything, but with regard to networking and collaboration, it's really important to think about this for a number of reasons. One is that it can be very synergistic to work with people in your discipline or in other disciplines who can give you great ideas about your research. Secondly, there can be opportunities for collaboration that can be very, very beneficial to you. Also, something I didn't realize early on was that in going to conferences, I needed to be a little bit more outgoing in meeting people, so that when I needed to have references outside of this institution who could vouch for me, for instance, in a grant proposal, or when I was applying to be a part of an institute, of a summer institute, I needed references who were outside my own institution. So that can be very beneficial for a number of reasons to network with others who are both here at UAS and elsewhere. Regarding service, I would encourage that in the early years, you limit service to make sure that you can fulfill your other obligations, but then later choose very strategically. And one of the things that I did early on was I agreed to serve on GAC, the Graduate Academic Advising Committee. And it was such a learning experience for me, because NORS is primarily a graduate program, and I was pretty clueless about how the whole graduate school worked and how the institution works with regard to graduate students. I learned so much by serving on that committee. So you could think about which committees that you could sit on, where you could actually serve, but also that would benefit you in your other roles. And then finally, just one point about, so in going up for full professor, the standards are different. It's like some people have said, it's a different job. And so there is an expectation for excellence in all three, or if you have two full areas of your workload, and leadership of some sort is expected. So you need to be thinking about that, sort of making your mark as you move up toward any plans to be prepared for, so you can be promoted to full professor. Thank you.
Does this work? Okay, I'm Amy Barnsley, and I work for CRCD in developmental mathematics. And this year I put my file in for tenure, and it's past the provost, so it just needs to go through the chancellor. So that's where I sit in my career. I'm in a bipartite position. So I know a lot of people are in positions that include research, and their process is much, much different. And so I think it's important. I know I went to one of these promotion and tenure workshops, and Roxy spoke about bipartite, and I thought, oh my goodness, thank goodness there's other people like me out there, because I didn't know what it meant to do promotion and tenure without research. So I'm bipartite. I have 4/5 of my position is teaching, and 1/5 is service, and I think the other union uses percent, but you can do the math. For me, and we talk about strategy, I tried to pay attention to those percents. I mean, honestly, I thought, okay, if 1/5 of my job is supposed to be service, you know, you think, okay, maybe that's 8 hours a week, and you think, holy smokes, that's a lot. So I probably didn't hit 8 hours a week, but I was conscientious about it. And that's one of the things that I got feedback through this process, and people said, oh, your service was really good. And it made me feel good, because I thought, well, good, because I tried to pay attention to it. I didn't want it to be something that was just focused so much on my teaching and then did an occasional committee. So that was one of my strategies, and I think it was good. Ask people to observe your teaching. It's really hard to do that. I think teaching is one of the only professions where you're in a room full of people, but all by yourself. You know, people aren't there with you, your coworkers aren't there, and your student evaluations, of course, are important, but you have to invite people into your room and ask them to write down their comments and give it to you, and do it multiple times, because what really looks cool is when you get one that's good and you get another one that's better, and then you write in your self-evaluation, well, I thought better. You know, that shows you're striving for improvement, and you're aware of what's, you know, just improvement, I guess. I think I didn't do that enough. I think I had 2 observations. One my first year, and one in a panic in May, when I was like, oh my God, I have to get my file together. I don't know evaluate or observations. So do that earlier, more often. Another thing, if you do it more often, you can pick and choose which ones you put in your file. So, mentoring by multiple people. Mary mentioned it, and I think it's true. I think you can get information from someone, and then you can ask someone else, and they give you a different opinion, and that's what you want. You want different viewpoints on the things that you face in your career, and you want to have as much information as possible. And I think if you just had one mentor, and if you thought of it sort of a stiff, formal thing, you wouldn't really be getting full mentoring, I think. And sometimes I hate the word mentoring, because we really need relationships with the people, not just, oh, it's a mentoring situation. But multiple, you know, seek out many different people outside of your department helps, because it gives you sort of an idea of what other people are facing. Situations are different, but you can transfer them, and it's outside of the politics of your own department and your own college, which can be an issue when you're doing promotion tenure. Ask lots and lots and lots of questions about the process, and try to understand it really well before you actually go through it. There's sample files. Look at them. Look at as many as possible. It gives you an idea of what other people are doing. And for me, I looked at some that were research and some that were more teaching, and it was good to see the different files for the different unions, how those are different. So I liked that, that helped. And then on the last thing is the meetings for promotion and tenure are open and go to them. I just called in, I didn't actually physically go, but it is very, very, very helpful to hear the conversation, and more, I would say, it just makes you feel better. It's like, oh my gosh, these people are really nice, and they like my fellow, and then to hear their discussion, I think like one of the discussions, they kind of addressed it, and they started talking about, well, now she goes up for a full professor. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But on the other hand, it was the conversation that then I got to hear, and little things get filed away for that point later in my career. And actually one of them that they said was the outside context. You know, they were looking at my file in terms of going up for just, you know, turning associate professor, but they said you want to make sure that you get more work at the national level. And I was like, okay, but not right, you know, wasn't a problem with this file, but that was something that just came up in one of the conversations in the open meetings. So I thought I wanted to share that. I was really glad I had done that.
So, United Academics P&T committee, university-wide committee, is generally closed. And it was closed this year. So every year, Faculty and Senate passes a resolution saying all committees should be open, all peer units should be open, but they decide every year whether to do it. And it's typically a decision because they want to be efficient. So my particular stance on that is that we should not be putting our colleagues' careers on the line just for the sake of efficiency, that these meetings should be open.
Yeah, and with different movements. But I will say that every meeting started with telling me that I was an observer and that I wasn't to talk unless I was asked a question. And it was hard because I was like sitting on my hands when they're having this discussion about full professor, because I wanted to say, but I'm not full professor. Don't hold me to that standard. And I couldn't say anything because they had clearly said to me, you know, thank you for coming, you know, you're here as an observer, and
Hi, my name is Karen Gustafson, and I'm an associate professor in the music department. I'm an incoming coordinator of the women's studies department, and I've been here for, this is my 10th year that I'm finishing up. Previous to this, I just want to let you know that I taught somewhat at the University of Toronto in a kind of a sabbatical replacement adjunct position, and I also taught in an adjunct position at Master University in Hamilton, Ontario. Before getting my doctorate, and after I got my doctorate, I got my first full-time assistant professor position at Oklahoma City University, and then I came to Fairbanks. So I've been in the education business quite a long time, but not necessarily as a full-time tenure track position. And that will be evident why I'm talking about that in just a few minutes, because I'm talking about going up for promotion and tenure prior to your mandatory year in a later comment. But the first thing I want to talk about is, I want to talk about three things. One is knowledge. The first topic is knowledge, and knowledge means knowing what is expected of you and knowing the blue book criteria inside and outside before you go up for promotion or tenure. It's vitally important that you understand either the two components or the three components, the teaching, the research, creative activity, and the service components before in your first year, because that directs how you need to present yourself to the university and how you need to present yourself in your files, and how you need to go about working on your activities. And in particular, I'm going to say service and research activities. I think most of us, although I could be wrong, know what is expected in teaching, because that's the one thing that, you know, we're told over and over. But I do agree that having those, having people come into your classes and write letters are prime importance. But knowing the blue book criteria will direct you in how you go about pursuing your career here. And it does change from university to university. So if you do come from a different situation, make sure you know the UAF policies, because they are, in my case, significantly different than my prior university positions. And even though And I'm just going to talk about a little bit as you go through the process of either your fourth year review or your promotion tenure, or I don't know it yet, but full-time professor. I'm assuming it's a similar type of thing. Know that you are allowed rights during the process. And those are pretty much outlined in the university standards. And know that you have the rights and responsibility to fulfill what is demanded of you within the Blue Book and what the university lies out. As you're going through the process, I'm going to encourage everybody to keep things, even though everything may seem very personal to you, you know, this is your personal life we're talking about. Life is a personal thing. To the committees and to the people looking at your files, it is not personal. It is a practice. And so you need to line up with, you know, try and keep your personal feelings out of it and try to keep it very professional. And this is where my second topic comes from, is having a support system and the mentor system. And I think we're all going to talk about it to some degree. And this is where you can find the ability to put things within their different areas. So you keep the personal out of it, and you try to use your mentors, try to use your support system that you developed hopefully throughout the entire campus. You know, me in music, I'm very much a, you know, arts person, and so I try to find people in sciences, and I try to find people in other parts of the CLA, and I particularly tried to find somebody who was knowledgeable about IAS scores and how to respond to those. When something comes up, an issue, you know, if an issue comes up within your file, people who are bean counters, mathematicians, and scientists, and I just want to point this out, being in music is very different than being in the sciences or mathematics or research areas that a lot of our faculty come from. And so if you're in an area that is not the biggest area within our campus, it's really good to start thinking about how those other people think. Numbers are important. And when you're looking at presenting your file, try and have some numbers, because people can say specifically, you know, that this is a number and this is what it means. It's a very non-subjective, or sorry, non-objective. Anyway, it's very firm. A number is firm. So, you know, when you're doing your responses and when you're putting together your file, try to put some numbers in, because those are very firm facts that cannot be disputed if there comes some type of discussion about, you know, something that people are disputing. So, when you're presenting your file, when you're preparing for your file, and I talked about not being personal, try to present your file, try to put together your file, try to put together your career, so that when other people from other departments are looking at it, they know what you're talking about. Because not everybody understands biology research, not everybody understands, you know, history, not everybody understands whatever. So try to put it together from an outsider's perspective, because that's who you're putting it together for. That's who you're developing your career portfolio while at UAF, not just for yourself. So try and always take things from an outside stance and looking in from another person's perspective while putting together your file and your career here. The other thing I'm going to talk about is just, you know, your support system and just having some outside people to do that. And the other thing is knowing your rights and responsibilities during this process. And we talked a little bit about open meetings versus closed meetings. And if there's an opportunity for you to choose an open meeting, I highly recommend it for exactly the same reasons that were just stated a few minutes ago. It's really great to be able to hear what people are saying, and you know how to respond in that way. You also know what kind of things that may not make it into your letter that you get from the committee. During the process, you will get letters from each step of the process, from the peer unit, from the dean, from the university-wide, from the provost, and then from the chancellor. You will get a letter, but it doesn't necessarily state everything in it that was talked about in the meeting. And so if you are listening, if it's at all possible for you to be there, do be there, because then you know what they're talking about. And even though you may not respond about that particular thing, you will have it in your head. Also try and have a mentor or two in the meeting if it's possible, because you and I both know that when we're listening to someone talk about ourselves, we have an inner talk going on saying, no, that's not right here, you know, and so we miss what's going on. Have the other people take notes, you take notes, and then talk about it afterwards if there's an opportunity to do that, because there are things that you're going to miss in an open meeting that may be very, very applicable to how you respond, or you just want to know. So, and as I said, I've worked in different positions. I've worked as an adjunct, and I've worked in other assistant or an assistant level in Oklahoma, and then here. It's very different across the board, so make sure you know exactly what UAS stipulates, because at my old university, it was a teaching-focused university, and so the research creative activity was not, it was important, but it wasn't nearly as important. Here, we are in bipartite or tripartite positions, and they are given delineations, if it's 60, 20, 20, or whatever your delineation is. That should be really pertinent to how you present yourself in your file. And if you're expected 1 year to do 90% teaching and 5% creative activity, 5% service, then make sure that you say that very, very clearly, because that makes a really big difference in what the expectations are for you. And again, that's where the numbers come into play. Make sure that you can focus on the numbers and have them outlined so that everybody sees it very, very clearly. Mentors are there not only to help you get through the process from the beginning, and I suggest getting mentors very early on, your first year. Don't just rely on the people in your department, because you just never know. They have, again, in music, we have a very music focus, but that's not the rest of the committee. And so you have to have many different delineated lines of mentoring. Ask somebody that you trust to look at your files several times, and before you put it up for promotion or tenure or fourth year, you should have it worked on months ahead of time so that people can look at it and they can give you responses. The earlier you can do it, the better. Have people who have no vested interest in your career look at it, okay, from a very outside way. And I'm just going to say one other thing. You are your own advocate, and there is nobody else here who has more vested interest in you than yourself. So you have to be persistent, and you have to be advocating for yourself, and you have to have an active role in that. You can't just say, oh well, this happened or whatever. You're your own advocate, and nobody else is going to advocate for you as well. So please take on the responsibility and persistence and the just to go and do it, because it's going to take time, it's going to take a lot of energy, and but you just have to do it. So anyway, that's what I have to say.
Hi, I'm Ellen Lopez, and I am in the a joint position with the Psychology Department and the Center for Alaska Native Health Research. So I last year went up for my 4th year review, and I was wondering if anybody here is going to be doing that in the near future. Okay, good. So just a few things about that. After coming through it, I want to just make sure you know that that's a really great time to reflect on this sort of 4-year marathon you've had. It gives you a chance to look back and kind of reflect on actually all you've done. And it's really easy to feel like you're never doing enough and you can never please everybody. But when you have this opportunity and it's kind of forced to compile everything you've done in the last 4 years, it's really enlightening. And so it's sort of something that you can look forward to in that way, because most people dread it, but it's really a great opportunity for that. In terms of getting ready, I mean, it's the same thing as everybody saying, you know, the mentoring and knowing what is expected, but really trying to find a way to keep track of things, keep track of all you've done, you know, in the file system, whether it's hard copy or anything, so that you can really put together something comprehensive. And share your ideas and what you've done with other people, so when they read your file, they can say, didn't you do this? Because some things might not be, you might not think it's outstanding enough, or it might seem mundane, but that's just to you. It might be something that makes you stand out, actually, when people are reading several files. So one thing about even putting together the package, not just reading other people's folders, because who had time for that? I mean, I couldn't go through somebody else's folder. But you can help somebody with their folder and see what they're doing as well. And that really helped me to demystify what this going up for a further review is all about. It's quite simple and straightforward. Also, when you do something in terms of service or teaching, or somebody shows you appreciation, keep documentation of that. Keep the cards, keep the emails when you get a thing saying thanks for reviewing this manuscript. Those go into your file. And you can create your own file. There's tables that they give you to fill out. But if you feel like there's a table that you'd like to add in that table and label it well. I always put down when I have, I put an asterisk when I'm working with a student on a paper. If I'm working with a community member, I'll put 2 asterisks. And make it very clear how my work has impacted beyond myself. You know, I have a whole table just for the grants that my students have gotten, because a lot goes into that, and we should get credit for that as well. If you're mentoring other people as a faculty member or another, in terms of a colleague or student, possibly making them a table about that, because that's not reflected right now. So just show what you feel you want to show, not necessarily what they think is the template, and it was well received for me. Also, there's different ways of showing our productivity besides just peer-reviewed journals. Now you might do online presentations, you might do abstracts, they have video abstracts now. Create a different table that just says, you know, peer-reviewed, other types of peer-reviewed products or something like that. And therefore it doesn't look like you're padding your peer-reviewed products, but you're showing that there's different ways of doing that now. When you think about when you write about yourself, you're supposed to write about the different aspects of your process. So whether it's teaching, research, or service. Definitely think about that as your own self-evaluation. Put yourself forward. Don't harp on the students who gave you a negative rating, but possibly add a quote from that person and explain why you think that person felt that way or what you're going to do to improve that. Like you said, improvement is a great step forward. But you're not expected to put in every single negative or positive thing you've ever received. It's your choice. It's your product that you're putting forward. You're trying to put yourself forward saying, this is what I've done over the last 4 years. And once I got that through my head, it was so much help. It was very helpful. Just create samples, things that you want other people to see. Possibly what you would want to show others if you were mentoring them. And in terms of the feedback you get back as it goes through different committees, respond to those and show your appreciation that way. And definitely take the opportunity. It takes a whole year to go through a process. So definitely as you respond, you could also say, I'm delighted to inform the next committee that a certain paper was published or a student graduated or things like that. You can keep updating your file pretty easily and pretty quickly with your responses to different committee letters. And I'm always happy to help people, and I have some great templates for putting together a binder, so if anybody wants those, I can always send them to you. Okay.
Okay. Well, we've been debating about which direction to go, and I had said that I'd finish up, but we'll do this way. I think it's interesting as I look at this. I've been at the university. I work with cooperative extension. I hold a bipartite position. I do both teaching and service, but my assignment is very different from many people. People who do teaching and service often do 90-10 or some larger number of teaching. Mine is the opposite. So service is where my work lies. And my work lies beyond the university because my job is to help the people of Alaska. So my outlook is a little different, but it's also different from the standpoint that I've sat on buku's committees. I have worked with the pre-tenure, post-tenure, all the different committees. And so, and my training and my background is in home ed. And so, like Karen says, when I get a file in front of me that's from the music department, I'm trying to familiarize myself. Did you ever think about it? That's why our committees are set up the way they are. There are a wide variety of people on those committees. You've got some scientists, you've got some bean counters, you've got some people that are more centered in the service. So that's why the committees are set up the way they are. It's because that if there's something that's unfamiliar to somebody within the committee, you know, I'll turn around and say, now, Karen and I have been on committees before, and I'll say, well, Karen, what do you think? What do you think is the, you know, would your department look at this? I want you to think as well, more than, and I'm a huge proponent for mentoring, and we've all said something about mentoring. It can be formal, informal, but get some people in your corner. The real thing about mentoring is that I say when you have active mentors in your department, they are sitting at the table reading your file. And there are people who can answer the questions when you put it together early enough for them to look at it. They've helped you shape that file, and they can answer when they told you to sit on your hands, Amy, and not say anything. There are people who can answer those questions. So I think it's always interesting to think about the philosophy of tenure and the philosophy of promotion. In effect, you're applying for a job. I think that's one of your favorite things to say. Is that we are looking. You know, we've been working with you to this point, and now what have you done, and why do we need to keep you around? So if you think about the philosophy of promotion or tenure as you go to that, is that helps you say, look, I did all these things. It has been a benefit to the university in this manner, and that's why you need to continue to keep me around. Now, that's my own little philosophy about how things are, but I do think that there's some opportunities there. Pay attention to your workload. If your workload says 90% teaching, 10% service, don't switch those numbers and not change it, because it will come back to haunt you. If you have a closer division, but I mean, unfortunately, I'm a whole economist, and I'm a bean counter too sometimes, because we're trying to put a file and a body of work into a component, into something that makes sense to us. So make sure your workload matches what you're doing. If it doesn't, change your workload, I know in extension we change them and don't think too much about it. Other departments it's not so much that way. But these are the things that you'll be judged by. Have a balance of service, and you're right. Don't sail in and be on every committee when you're first starting, because you need some time to establish yourself. But think about service to I always look at it: service to the university, service to your profession, and service to and of course I said my bias is I work at cooperative extension, so it's service to the people of the state. And so think about that. Even if it's something as simple as being a judge for the science fair, you've done something that uses your professional abilities to help other folks. And so service can be in a variety of different manners. And I've seen people, we look at committees and we look at things that, man, look at all the service to the outside. What have you done for the university? No. And so, I mean, look for, and I mean, we all have our own areas we love to do. And that's understandable, but look for a balance in there. Professional organizations are actually a really good idea to promote yourself to move on to full professor. They are also methods to find people. When it's time for you to go up, see if your profession has a list of people who are qualified. I don't know exactly how to say it. But many of our professional organizations hold a list of people who have agreed to look at files. Always better to have a really good personal relationship with the people that you're asking to review your materials. But all else fails, your organization, your professional organizations may have some help from those things. Know the climate of your department. Know what stands, what is expected. You can find that out from your mentors. You can find that out from people around you that are working in the department. Know the people that you're working with. I always say that, there's certain organizations that eat their young. That's not a good way to put it, but you know what I mean. They are going to make you come up to snuff to your advantage, and then so you need to know what the climate is of your department. And what will pass in your department may not be what passes in somebody else's department. So understand what the climate is in your department. There's always an opportunity to look at people across the university that have abilities, who have served on committees before. They are the people who can help you understand. Karen told you, know the blue book. Know the way those files are put together. And the final thing I'm going to say is make it abundantly clear when you get that information. That's why you ask people to look at your file. Make it abundantly clear what's in there. Don't tick off the people that have to read it. In cooperative extension, we are famous for files that are well, I shouldn't say too big. Sometimes we put lots of examples of materials and that kind of thing in there. So remember that you want to be able to get the information to somebody. Let somebody else look at it from that standpoint. Don't put too much or too little in there. We do want to see what you are capable of, but don't make me imagine.
So we've also been asked to talk about mentorship and mentoring, and I'm actually a mentor dissentor. That I see that this overemphasis on mentoring can then lead to a sense of cronyism, that unless you've got a mentor in your department. If you happen to be in a hospital department and there isn't anyone who is your mentor, then you can't count on that person. So I actually like Amy's idea of developing networks across campus. And if you happen to be in a hospital department, or then you just have to turn outside. And so I would just also resist the crony system. Actually, the rest of my talk is about managing the bumps in your path. So, you know, I'm hoping that the tenure and promotion process goes well for you, your review process goes well for you, and I wish that everyone has a wonderful career here at UAF, but every once in a while, one of us is going to encounter a bump in the path, and so I want to talk about how to manage that. So bumps in the path that are relatively serious, like if you get a negative dean's review, or at the peer unit level, your committee votes, the majority votes against you, or you get even something like a reprimand from your dean or something like that. These are the major bumps in the path that might seem like they're career stoppers, but none of them are. There's just a way you just have to manage the process, and you can turn this bump in the path into an opportunity for excellence, actually. So here's some of my ideas. First thing, look at the action carefully and consider, is it legitimate? Did the peer unit legitimately zing me on core teaching evaluations, for instance? And if it's legitimate, then you work to correct the flaw. And you can respond to it, and you always respond to the next level, which I'll talk about in a little bit more in a moment. But if the action is illegitimate, then you have rights as a union member, and also the university guarantees you due process rights. So you just have to deal with it. And my second piece of advice is to keep it in perspective. I think it was Kim who was talking about trying not to take things personally. And you just have to keep in perspective, and this is where your network of support will help you. It can be an embarrassing, humiliating moment, and you might think that everything's over, and so someone who can help you keep it in perspective is important. And if you have a dog, walk the dog, drink lots of tea, try to get sleep, and realize that it's just part of the process to be upset and angry even, but just try whatever you have to do to keep the issue into perspective. My third point is that not responding to a negative personnel action is not an option. You have to respond, and you have to keep track of deadlines, and you have to do this at a time when you are probably pretty upset, and the last thing you need to do is to find the deadline. But look at the paperwork. There will always be a deadline. Usually you have like 10 days to respond to any kind of negative action, and respond. So write the letter, and my advice would be to write the letter and put in all the invectives that you want, and then delete it. Put it out if you want to, and put it under your pillow, whatever you need to do. Go see a friend, have a ritual burning. That's nice. But you have to respond, and after you get all the invectives out, you get that negative energy out, then sit down and write a nice calm letter and get someone else to read it, and make sure that you take out any kind of defamatory words. Don't call your committee members names, and in the next letter. Find out your rights about as a union member, and there's handouts back there. I think there's enough for everyone that actually has the CBAs, the links to the CBAs for the United Academics, and then the UAFT as well. So you have rights as a union member. You also have rights under Board of Regents policies that guarantee you rights of due process and outline those too. So along with the Blue Book, the Board of Regents policies and your CBA are your friends. The next one is to find allies and build your network of support. And often, hopefully you've already got this strong network going, and you're settled really pretty comfortably in your career at UAF. But if you are one of those people who didn't find allies, didn't find mentors, don't have a strong support system, then you need one. And it's not too late, even in a crisis, to find other people. And I would suggest that you start with your union office. But I know United Academics, we have Cindy West, who is a very strong advocate for faculty, and she is a good listener and has sage advice. So if nothing else, talk to one of your union reps. You probably, yes. That's on my list, I forgot to say it. And that, I think, I'm just going to uphold what Zita just said. Cindy West has been through this hundreds of times before, and she knows exactly how to respond to things. She knows the collective bargaining agreement inside and out, and she can help you put together a letter that is going to be effective.
And Cindy's here. She's the fabulous woman with a hat. Generally she can talk with you within 24 hours of any kind of incident. My third point is to manage the paper trail. Nowadays that we've got electronic, everything is electronic, it's a little bit more difficult to manage the paper trail. But if it's something that is really sensitive information, you might consider using non-university emails. And just make a Gmail account. You also be careful when you use Facebook. So probably, once it gets on the internet on Facebook, it's never going to come down. So resist the temptation to get online and to call your committee members any bad words. There's also, the university is allowed to keep certain files on faculty, but they have to be very carefully managed. So make sure that you read the Board of Regents policy on personnel files, supervisors' files, and any other kind of files that the university can keep on you. Two more points. I think that one thing, instead of looking for the exit when a crisis, a career crisis happens, instead of looking for the exit, look first for the escalator. Look first about how can you use this moment, this bump in the road, to maybe better your situation. So it might be the case that you have a crisis in your peer unit, and you suddenly realize this is a really toxic environment, and I think maybe I should apply for a job elsewhere. Or it might be the case that the committee's review of your research, you realize, well, I really don't like this research either, and maybe I'm not being productive because I really don't like this line of research. And maybe you'll come up with a new line of research that will invigorate you and make you again excited, like Mary was talking about, excited about doing research. So, but you wouldn't have even realized that except for this bump in the road that you experienced. So look for ways up, not for look for ways out. And then finally, my last point, this does bring us back to mentorship. After you have solved your bump in the road, after you have managed it, and after your path is smooth again, then turn around and look and see if there's any other faculty who may be experiencing bumps in the road, and share your advice and lend a hand, and understand that sometimes something just as simple as a friendly hello in the elevator, and it's like, oh, I hear you're going up for fourth year review this year. Be happy to review your file for you and reach out for other people and help them manage their funds. Thank you. This is out of order, but I wanted to respond to something Roxy said, that she had said this in a previous tenure promotion, and it really helped me, talking about the culture of your department and knowing that. And if I have a specific example, for my union, it says don't put in your student opinion survey information from when you were an adjunct, but that is not the norm for my department. And so I wouldn't have known that, if I had just, the thing is, it says don't put it in there. And my mentor said, oh no, ignore that. No, we all put it in there. And I think the history of that is that in CRCD, so many people were adjunct for so long that those years are important as teachers, that we developed our art and practice of teaching, and that's the emphasis of our job. So I wouldn't have known that, and when Roxy said, make sure you know the culture of your department, there's things that aren't, it's not written, but it's there. And a mentor can help with that, but I wouldn't have known that. So that was a specific example of culture.
Well, and one more that along the same lines is, and we get into this debate. I came from another university where I was an associate professor. I came to UAF and took a position as an assistant professor. So then you get into debate of, do you bring in the things from your other place? And then we also have a number of people who come in as associates, and then you have to prove yourself within a shorter length of time. So once again, know those rules. Know whether the people within your committee will look at the tenure from another state as favorable, or do you have to start all over again? So again, it's those kind of things of knowing what the expected is. And I would have been it was before we had 4-year review, which I think, I'll tell you, I think that's the best thing we ever did, was to have that first step where you can look and see, you can evaluate yourself. It might put you in some of these, maybe I have a different method kind of thing, but at the same time, it does give you something to aim at. And one thing nobody said, but I always took that, anything that either my director, the dean, anybody said to me, or in the 4-year review, what I really look for is I look at that 4-year review and then I say, okay, what have they done to improve it? Look for opportunities for growth. But if you don't have good, it comes back, don't let it defeat you. It comes back and says, you're not a good teacher. Well, it doesn't have to stay that way. And if you then turn around and from that 4-year review or any other, dean's evaluation of you, and then you come back and say, okay, these are the things I've done. That shows growth. It shows moving on. And so I think those are things that make us stronger. In my particular case, I did pull in my stuff from Montana State. And I said, I was tenured in Montana State. This is what I've done. May not work in your state, but extension services are very similar. So.
And just along that line, if someone says to you, you're going up for tenure early, that does not exist. There is no such thing as early tenure or promotion. There is, however, tenure and promotion prior to mandatory year. And all that means is that you can bring, in my case, bringing things in from another university wasn't an option, but apparently it is an option in other places. Yeah, it just depends. But just remember that if someone says that to you, says, well, you're going up for promotion early, so therefore you're expected to do more than what's expected. It is not true. And the person to talk to is Cindy about that, because she knows. If someone says that to you, don't believe it. There's no such thing as early tenure promotion. There is such a thing as going up prior to your mandatory year if you feel that you have the stuff to get there.
Okay. Is this Mike? Good. It's perfect time for questions and discussion. I'm going to ask everyone to speak into the mic because it's being recorded.
Yeah, I was hoping you could speak a little bit to the external reviewers of your file. How do you pick them? How are they asked to evaluate your file? Essentially, are you picking somebody from a university now that has very stringent requirements? We do usually it's not quite as strict about certain things. And so if I would ask somebody from Purdue University, for example, that would be, so how are they asked to look at my file?
So I can start with that. When I went up for tenure, the 2 people I chose were people I had met at conferences. And so I think it was Mary Erlander who mentioned the importance of that. So these were 2 sociologists who worked in similar fields, and one ended up being an editor of a journal. And that was really helpful, but I would not have been able to meet those people except for going to conferences and being kind of brave and, going to their workshops, going to their sessions, and then approaching them afterwards and saying, I'm UAF and I'm going to be going up for tenure, and would you mind looking at my work? And both were very gracious about it. And then in CLA, at least, I'm not sure exactly how it works in other units and other colleges, but you suggest the names of the reviewers to the dean, and then the dean will choose whether to use those 2 people and has the option of adding other people that she or he chooses as well.
Can you pick more than 2 names?
Can you pick more than 2 names, Cindy?
You can to your dean submit a list of names that is more than 2. You are the expert in your discipline, and not all our deans are an expert in your discipline. So if you know 4 to 8, you can submit all 8 names with 2 that are your significant preference, so that your dean would not have to go out and look for other experts in the field. He does not have to keep it to your list of additional names. But you're the expert in your field, and you know who in your field is considered an expert would be able to look at your CV and be able to write you a note or a letter. Write you a letter on how he felt your CV reflected your accomplishments. Because that's all your evaluator for external letters get, is your CV.
I have some questions about that. It's a great here. Can you, so I've been at 2 other institutions, and both of those institutions, you could have a list of do not ask people. So if you have an enemy in your discipline, and in those institutions, the committee is not the dean, the committee, your department can select additional names because they are in your discipline. So is that part of it here? Okay, and letter writers at the other institutions I've worked at look at your entire file, and they are expected to comment on your research papers, their significance. That's not what goes into letters here.
Your CV, your CV is what lists your accomplishments. Your external reviewers can look at all that, or they can look at your CV and write a note. You cannot, and it has not been negotiated into a contract where you can write do not contact to a professional in your discipline. That is totally open to all.
So if I can make another comment on that, and CLA at least, the practice in the past has been that the dean sends only the CV to the reviewer, but that you can do the work outside of that, and you can email your reviewers and say, here's a link to my paper. You can send them the papers themselves, and write like a little paragraph of, you may recall that I've done this, this, and this, and to give them something to write in their letter, because the letter from the dean is really pretty generic. It's Rocky Denzel's going up for promotion to full professor. Would you please comment on her contributions to the field? And so if you get as much information as you can give the reviewer in advance, then the stronger their letter is, and they can provide specific examples of how excellent you are.
I think I'm still a little bit foggy on how you pick those people. I think from past workshops, I heard, I think Paul Layer had talked about this before, that these people are not supposed to have any relationship with you.
Right, so no, ask your major professor. No one from graduate school actually is appropriate. But one way you can find it is journal editors or reviewers. If you can find out any of the reviewers who have positively commented on your work, that's a good choice. Journal editors, if you publish more than once in a particular journal, that's a good choice. To people who work in your field, so one of my colleagues in sociology actually suggested a person who she had never met that they work in the same field. It's medical sociology. It's a pretty narrow field in sociology. So she chose a leader in the field of medical sociology and suggested the name. And as far as I know, I think that the reviewer did not even know that she'd been suggested until she got the letter from the dean. But because it's such a small field, of course she knew Melanie's work well enough.
I'm just going to say something about that, and I think this may be what you're getting at. When I was choosing people, I'm a trumpet player, so I was thinking, okay, well, I played with Doc Severson. Is Doc Severson going to give me a great letter? No, because Doc Severson has never worked at a university, and particularly a research institute. So what I looked at is I looked at full professors at other institutions that were very similar to ours, as far as I could tell, who were well known in the field, and who I might have known from a conference or whatever, but didn't know me, really intimately. And so I think if you can get somebody who writes a letter based on their knowledge of experience working in a university for several years, and I think people who are either retired from a college after 30 years or in the final stages of their career, because they, I believe, have a better and fuller perspective on the cycles that happens. And they have also gone through the tenure process, and they have been on several committees. So they know how to write a letter. I've seen files of people who have asked colleagues, I guess, or that they chose, and the person says, well, I don't believe in tenure, and so, you know, I'm writing this letter, and you know, whatever. I you know, go for it. Give me tenure or her tenure, but I don't believe in tenure, so this process is pretty, you know. and we've had those letters. So pick people who are going to, A, know the process, and B, be in a similar situation, institution, and really well known in your field, is my advice. Does that answer the question?
No, not really. So, it's essentially, you know, there's certain aspects here that I think people can comment on. So there's your CV, that will reflect your research, but is that really the only thing that these people are asked to comment on, and your contribution to the field? Because, you know, service, or in particular with regard to Native communities, might be just as important. So would it be a good decision to maybe ask a community leader to provide a letter? Do we have to pick somebody outside of Alaska completely? There's management organizations and so on that you know, could maybe comment on your contribution to the, you know, to bringing the field forward with regard to management decisions. So that would be obviously within Alaska, and somebody within Alaska that could comment on your contribution there as well. So it's, I guess I really don't understand what is asked of these people and how this information is used.
The interesting thing is that you can put letters of support in your file, and I would suggest that if you had a leader that can speak to your ability to meet the needs of the people, to meet the university, that's where that letter needs to go. And so that's kind of like what Ellen was talking about. Keep those letters where anybody says, good job. But don't keep the ones that they just say, good job. Keep the ones that say, thank you for presenting this program on, in some kind of a comment. That gives us something to go on. We get lots of letters that say thank you, which can be useful or not. But just a thank you is a good thing. But if you have the option of putting a letter in that says thank you, or one that says thank you for your ability to present this information to whoever in a manner, that tells the committee more. As for the outside reviewers, it's kind of an interesting process. You don't want to choose those people that you have a relationship with, that you have you know, that you have paired with on your research project, or that kind of thing, because that's somewhat suspect. That, yeah, they're going to give you a review. Because the thing is that, again, going back to the philosophy of this outside review, is that it is an opportunity for somebody else to look at your materials. And I think it differs. The instructions that come from the dean sometimes differ, because I've seen letters that said they would or would not pass P&T in my university. And so, again, I'm not asking to be promoted at Oklahoma State University. So I kind of hate those. They kind of slip in sometimes, because that's not what you're asking for. You're asking for promotion at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And so when you look to those outside reviewers, think of them as being a person who could give an unbiased look on your what you've done to improve the field, what the impact of your research, the impact of your teaching, those kind of things. So to me, that's the opportunity that outside reviewer does. And I have been guilty of putting together a packet of materials and sending it with my file, because I am just I'll stack the deck whenever I can. I start sending, you didn't hear that, because I did want to give people more. I get a lot to look at that I'm to do a review on. And sometimes the information is not clear enough on that CV that I can do a real good honest assessment. And when it comes back that either there's not enough information there or they choose, that's the other thing I think you ought to do, dog your people. I shouldn't say that. It's really difficult when everybody's got 2 letters in there and all of a sudden the file comes up that it doesn't have any. So did they choose not to do it because they were busy? And that's one of those gray areas that we can't say that. I mean, from the dean's office, they can't say, well, they just didn't follow through. Maybe that's an answer for Cindy. I don't know.
So you will know all the names of the people that they've asked for letters from, like they disclose that to you. So say you give 2 names and the dean says, well, I want to find another person. Are you going to know what the answer that you are, who that person is? Or is it
United Academics in the collective bargaining agreement, it specifically states that you are allowed to submit 2 names of external review letters, and then you can submit additional. Your dean, if he chooses, can notify your 2 and up to 2 of his own and send out your letters. When those letters reply, they are due by September 1st, and they will be given to you directly to put in your very own file. You are in charge of your promotion and tenure minor, no one else. If you get the letter and you don't put it in your email or in your file, you are responsible for not getting it in there. You are faculty members. You control your file. We don't want anyone else in control of our file.
Thank you.
Do we learn the names if he does ask for the 2 additional people? Do we learn those names early in the process or only when it shows up?
only when it shows up?
Ethically, if you put names in for an external reviewer, that it is just that. It says in the collective bargaining agreement that your CV will be provided to the external reviewers, and they will be asked for input. Ethically, you should not try to influence their writing of anything about you, because it's not you writing a letter about yourself. You've already done that in your self-evaluation. An external reviewer should be given the documentation from your dean and allowed to provide the input. Then they are true external review letters.
Know the climate.
Also know that people writing your letters may go onto the internet, and anything that's out there is fair game.
Yeah, thank you very much. So just this discussion of the external reviewer, you did a discussion about promotion from associate to the full professor or not? It also applies for the tenure track to associate.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Yes.
Not for
Yes.
review.
Not for the okay, thanks a lot. And then regarding the fourth review, I have a couple of other questions. If somebody wants to summarize the teaching, for example, evaluation from those standard sheets, they have a 20 plus or those 30 items, and for example, from mine, I have from excellent for each of them up to sometimes poor. So I can summarize those. Do you have any suggestions how probably I can teach a course for like 3 years or 2 years, how I can summarize those in a way that the reviewer can actually see the picture?
It's good to, I mean, the way I was told was, or suggested, was to choose one thing I'm very proud of on those evaluations, like 1 or 2 questions, and some of those questions are very summary, like I think like 5 of them are more important than other questions on there. Yeah, and so like choose, a place where you're proud and you're really, you are very happy to find that your students like something, and what that is, and then maybe even follow it up with one of their quotes. But then a place where, I think it's helpful to say, but a place where I find that I have challenges is this, and you can summarize saying my scores went from excellent too fair or whatever, and that, and then showing, especially if you're going to show anything about where you were fair, how you plan on improving and whether it's working or not.
Maybe I could just add to that. I think that was a great idea that Ellen suggested, that you pick out something, one area and one really shine. But in our unit, we take that summary figure for the top four. The top four items, there would be a summary number for that. So that's done for you already. And my unit tends to focus on that. So that's a face dive. You have to address where that comes out, and then you can average those numbers on your various SOIs, the summary of the top four. And you can even separate out, if you find it useful, lower division classes from upper division classes from graduate classes, and you may find a pattern. And for instance, you may get lower ratings in a class that's required of all students in your discipline, or like if it's a core course, and then everybody knows that, oh yeah, everybody gets bad or lower ratings there. So you do have to address the ratings, and there are easy ways to summarize those, especially using that top four.
So I got some really great advice from David Thomas, who is a statistician, used to be before he got promoted up. But he suggested that I take all of those four items on all of my students' IAS forms and put it in a table by section number and by year. And so by course number, by year, by question. And so it's this real complex table, but then the people looking at my file could look at that right-hand column and see the kind of the average of the average, the mean of the mean, which I found out in my fourth year review that you actually can't do a mean of a mean. But I got this from David Thomas, who is a statistician, and so he should know. And that was real helpful because then the people could see the trends, at least in this summary table. So that might help.
Just a brief question about how to show development. So I think most people in here are teaching sort of the same classes regularly every year or every second year. In my case, it turned out that I developed into some sort of a fill-in, so when people go into sabbaticals and I'm teaching their classes. So very regularly I have to teach classes once, or I teach a class once and then again 3 years later in between somebody else taught it. So do you have any suggestions how to sort of construct a development story out of that?
Well, student opinion of instruction is not the only way to evaluate how great you are in this institution and in the classroom. If you will go to your collective bargaining agreement, it lists other things that if you take advantage of, you can contact experts in your discipline, you can contact Joy Morris's office, you can contact a senior professor, have sitting in your class and write you letters of how they saw your classroom action, because your teaching is more than student opinion of instruction. Student opinion of instruction, you should adhere and look at everything the students say to help you improve. But overall, your best advice of how to improve your teaching and show improvement in your classrooms is to have someone evaluate annually, come in and sit in your class and provide you ways and mentor you on how to improve that teaching.
And your question, I'm first-year faculty, so the questions might be obvious to some, but the first one is, do faculty recognition awards that where you're nominated by students, does that count towards your file? Okay. And then the second one is Is there any sort of weight given to the certain committees that you sit on within the university? Because I've heard from at least one person that they went up for a tenure interview, and one committee that they sat on for many years they actually didn't get any credit for. And so I was kind of, I don't know if that's an exception or, I don't know, I just wondered if there are certain committees that get more weight in your file.
Well, maybe I could answer, I think you got your answer to the first question, but I have never been aware of any specific ranking system with points to it for which committees one sits on. However, one is supposed to, and especially as you rise in your career, you're expected to do more leadership is expected. And so, for instance, university-wide committees, being on faculty senate, something like that, is appreciated. But you can get dinged for not doing enough for your department. I have someone, and you know, she had plenty of time to repair that. But basically, I think the important thing is there should be some balance, and sometimes it's good, I think, to vary. I don't know how smart it would be to sit on the same committee for a long, long time. For one thing, well, the other committees would change, but I found that sitting on committees has been a wonderful way to get to know people, other people around campus whom I don't see on an everyday basis. So for those reasons, I would vary.
Well, can I ask that? I know I saw Cindy shake your head. No, they don't have any weight. And over here going, yeah, they do. And here's why. It's soft. It's not, and Cindy's going to go by CA, you know, but the soft edge of it is if you have a committee that meets once a month for an hour, that's much, much different than a committee that meets weekly, has, you know, a fairly big project once a year that they're working on. And so, you know, is someone going to look at that and go, well, this committee doesn't count and this one does? No, not by the name of the committee, but in your self-evaluation, that's your job to promote yourself and to say, this is what I did, this is the work I did on this committee, it was amazing, it was fun, I worked with colleagues, we made a difference, we impacted students, or we impacted the community. So yeah, I think it does make a difference what committees you choose to serve on, but only in the level of engagement. So for me, I was like, 1/5 of my job is supposed to be service. I kept thinking 8 hours a week, holy smokes. But if the committee starts to demand a lot of my time, I just think, well, you know, 2 weeks ago I didn't do any service, and then this week I did 12 hours. You know, and I just keep putting that in perspective. How much am I supposed to be doing for service? And then I'm more likely to be the volunteer when they go, oh, we need someone to do this. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm all over that. Give me that. I'll do that job. I'll see you guys next week. I'll have it done.
The other thing is that we've all got sucked in on something that you thought was going to be easy, and all of a sudden it morphs into something else. So I would tell you, look at what you're doing, at least, you know, on a periodic basis, and change your committees up. If you've got one of those that's just sucking the life out of your research or anything else, it's taking up your time, then evaluate and see if that's a committee you want to stay on. And really take an overall look at it, because sometimes things just, they evolve. And so you want to make sure that the small things don't take up the majority of your time.
I have one more thing to add. Make sure that your service doesn't override your other activities. I mean, you know, in our department or our unit, you know, 10% of our workload is generally what we do for service, and often people, I mean, it's really great to work with people. It's really great to provide your professional services to the community, to the university, to, you know, other associations, but just make sure it doesn't suck up all of your time, and that's something to be careful of as a young faculty. Frankly, the older people, I'm not going to say older, sorry, that's a bad word, but the more experienced, and the associate professors and the full professors should be taking on their load. And often it's the case, I hate to say it, that those people don't do that. And, you know, within your department, it's really essential to protect it's a responsibility of the full associate professors to mentor the young people and say, you're not to do too much service because you have your research and creative activities to do. And it's their responsibility to allow you to do that. And it's your department chair and it's your dean's responsibility to allow you to do that. So, you know, be very careful you don't get sucked into doing too much service. As a music professor, I walk out the door in the morning and I'm doing service, you know, because I'm going to schools every week and I'm, you know, and it gets to be a lot. So just, you know, if someone says, or your dean or your chair or whatever says, well, you should be doing this and that and the other thing, say, you know, gee, let's talk, because it was my understanding that I need to be concentrating on these other things that I need to do. And really, they're doing you a disservice if they're trying to put this service work on you. It's their responsibility to do that work. That's why they have the associate and full professor, you know, titles.
Question here.
Hi, my name is Laverne Pimentel, and I work in the social work department as a clinical assistant professor. I've been there for 8 years. I'm bipartite, thinking about going up for promotion, and I was wondering, you know, we don't have a research component, but we are doing research and I'm doing my dissertation. So how much of that should be in there? I know you could focus on service and focus on teaching. That's your main component.
You want to put your file together to reflect what you are employed to do at the University of Alaska, because that is what they're going to judge you on. All the outside things like doing a dissertation and any external service, etc., you can highlight in your annual activity report, but you are responsible, and your criteria for promotion and tenure is based on 30 workloads that the university is responsible to you for.
Okay, so the 30 workloads, so I'm not supposed to talk about my summer research? This is not supposed to be reflected?
Some people have more and have contract extensions.
Right, but this is because of funds that I bring in.
Exactly, so you want to highlight those.
So, okay, no, hang on, but if I have so essentially talk about my workload, I'm supposed to talk about the 30 units and then talk about the summer extra?
You were paid, correct, for the summer extra?
Because I brought in the funds.
Well, you were evaluated on what is paid, whether you brought in the funds, and you brought them through the university. Nobody walked up to you and handed you a check.
Right.
Yeah. So it belongs to the university.
Okay. So
It can be
it's a 30 plus 10 then.
For your workload. Okay, each workload is different, but a basic 9-month faculty member has 30 workload units that the university compensates for and evaluates you on. If you only do 30 bare minimum workloads, the standards in the Blue Book that require exceptional and outstanding, you're not going to meet the criteria because you just can't. You have to be, for the awarded tenure, totally engaged in academia.
Everywhere else I've worked, even if it's a 9-month contract, people do their writing and research over the summer. And so any journal article I submit this summer doesn't count because I didn't submit it. It was on your workload. So I think there's a difference between your annual evaluations that we're now subject to and going up for promotion and tenure, which is about your career. It's about what you've accomplished. So it's about your research agenda. When you actually write the paper, when you actually get it published, if you did the research over Christmas break or while in the summer when you're on contract, that's still your research agenda. So when you actually accomplish it, doesn't matter so much. And my advice is instead of thinking about the 30 workload units, look at the percentage about how your bipartite or tripartite job is distributed. And so make sure that your file, when you go for promotion and tenure, that it reflects the percentages of what your work is. So for instance, Rossi's, what, your 90% service. So even regardless of what time of day or what time of year you do that service, that you're judged on the overall
contributions that you're making. Does that help?
Laverne, did you get your question answered?
Wait, can I interrupt? I am exactly like you. I am bipartite and I just finished my PhD. It has nothing to do with my job, technically. And you bet, I 100% put it in my tenure file, and I think it helped. My research was related to my job, and in my self-evaluation, you can put anything you want. And I put in there, this is not part of my workload. However, it is relevant to my job. It was exciting research. It helped my field. Here's what I did. As a teacher, I'm required to do professional development. I think getting a PhD, I think we can call that professional development. So yeah, I'm exactly like you. It wasn't required. My degree for my position is a master's degree. But this PhD was a lot of work, and I did it because of my job. And it made me a better teacher. It made me better. Am I a researcher? Nope. Wasn't primary workload. So whether you're required or whether you want to submit it, that file is your work. You choose what goes in there. And I know there's obviously some constraints, but I'm telling you, for me, it helped. I put it in there. I'm proud of it. It related to my job.
And it's going to help in your future because, frankly, our dissertations, our thesis, or whatever we do for our DME or our master's projects are, hopefully, if you've been mentored correctly, they should be publishable in part or in whole. And so that is going to further, pad your CV that, I finished my dissertation, I published in these 3 journals, different parts of it. And that's huge publication work. And, as we do our dissertations through our doctorate degrees, hopefully our mentors have told us that, your dissertation is your first published work along your career in academia.
I was wondering about how you incorporate the results of your 4th-year review into the promotion file, and do you include those reviews that you got along the way, and do you write some sort of response in your narrative, or how do you do that?
The 4th-year review will be put in your file. All reviews, all your annual reviews from now on. So all reviews will follow you. And your response letters should be the response letters that you wrote originally at the time. So if there's something that you didn't deal with, if there's some kind of critique that you didn't deal with at the time, then you should deal with it in their narrative if it's important. But sometimes it's no longer important. If it was just that they miscounted your publications and you had 11 and they said you had 10, that's probably not something that you have to deal with in the narrative of PNC. Would you agree with that? So?
Yeah. Yeah, I would. And the other thing is that that material, and that's what I was referring to, is it's a great place to use in your self-evaluation to say, I had these criticisms or whatever, however you want to say, in the 4-year review. And so therefore, these are the things that I have addressed in the last 3 years in order to improve. These are the things I've done. So it's kind of like, okay, here's the challenges. Use it like a target. I've met these things. Makes it really easy for committees too, because if you have looked at what the criticisms were and you have addressed those in building the rest of your career, or maybe they weren't important. And so that, I think, as well, is maybe you changed your research focus or whatever. But these are the stories that you can relate through your self-evaluation.
And I would just add that it may not even be a criticism. In my unit, sometimes at 4th-year review, people will make comments such as, oh, she's doing just great, continue on in this at this rate, or we'll expect to see make sure these articles are published now by the time you go up for promotion. And so use that as a gauge, and then you can talk about that in your narrative and say, I followed up on that, and these are published, and I have one more.
I think one thing to be careful of or not careful, but aware of in your responses and in committee's responses. So a committee will say, she's doing great, again, make sure that these are published. If that's the only thing they're addressing, then do it. Do it. And then when a committee comes up, maybe, the next committee during the promotion or tenure, or when you come up for promotion and tenure, and a committee is saying, well, we expected this, this, and this. It's like, well, but this is what the 4th-year said, or this is what the last committee or person said, and I addressed that, and I've done it. Why didn't this come up before? And frankly, these committees are really doing a disservice if they don't say, well, she needs to get this published, and we also expect that her teaching is going to improve, and the service load is, and then those are things that you can go on, and you just simply correct it, and there's lots of ways to do that. Joy Morrison is a great person to help with the teaching. There's, talk to your dean about the service, whatever, but then if they come up, with the last, letter from the provost saying, she says, well, but I want to see this. And it's like, well, but that's never been mentioned. So how am I to address that? Because this has never been mentioned, but I have solved every other problem along the way. It's pretty hard for someone then to say, I'm sorry you don't get promotion and tenure because in this last step, this is what somebody wanted, but it's never been addressed before. So, hopefully in the 4th-year review and in the committee's 3-year promotion and tenure or 3-year full professorship, they're giving you direction, and really that's what it's for, and it's a good thing to have some direction to go with, because if they're not giving you direction, no help, exactly.
So I will step in here and then remind those of us who are tenured, who have moved forward, that our responsibility to review files. So if you're sitting on a P&D committee or you're on one of the university-wide committees, take your job seriously. And everyone sitting here, I have served on committees with them, and I know that they do. So this is an obligation that we have to use. So once y'all get tenured and promoted, then read the files carefully and stick up for your colleagues where necessary, and read the files thoroughly.
I've been on committees with people that I swear they never looked at it. And it is so evident that they haven't looked at it. And so the rest of the committee is watching too. And they know. It is a responsibility. We agreed to be on the committee, so take it seriously. Do what is expected of you. We're all busy people. I always work forward from the standpoint of we've already filled every minute of our day. But when you take on those responsibilities, do them right. I've also sat on that committee with people who said, they really have a lot listed in service, but I served on this committee, and they're not following through and doing their share of it. So you don't live in a vacuum. And the people on the committee are people who are your coworkers. Now, we know that, hopefully nobody's there to grind an axe or anything like that, but they do know, so take it seriously. Don't just be on the committee to be on the committee. Do your part. And the same with promotion and tenure. I mean, it's your reputation. I'm just a huge proponent. We were having this visit. It's a good life. We are truly blessed in a lot of ways. I mean, 2 days ago, don't ask me that. It was not a good day. But the thing is that overall, we have a responsibility when we agree to do things that we're going to do our very best. So, lecture.
Well, just one other thing, and I said this before, advocate for yourself. You're your own best advocate, but be aware, because there are processes that happen that sometimes are not adhered to, and if you're aware of that, even if it's a closed meeting of something and you're not supposed to be in the room, go sit outside the room, because I have known people to go, I'm serious. I'm serious here. To go and just sit outside the room. Because there have been times when procedures have been questionable with other people showing up, and you're aware of it if you're sitting there. It may be a closed meeting, but you know what's going on by who else is showing up. It happens, unfortunately. So just be aware, advocate for yourself, and don't be afraid of standing up for yourself, because that's what you need to do. And, you know, people may look at you and say, well, they're just a troublemaker, there's this, that, and the other thing. No, it's your career, it's your livelihood, it's your professional person that you're standing up for, and you can do it in a very professional way. It doesn't have to be mean and nasty, and hopefully nobody else will be. But if you're standing up for yourself, be aware of the process and advocate for yourself.
Yeah. Thanks, Karen. Are there any other questions?
One short question. Amy, you mentioned multiple sample files. Where would you find them?
I believe, Sally, at this meeting last year, there was a stack of them on the back counter. Oh, was the fall one? Okay, the one put on by your office. Okay.
I have them in my office.
It's what I was looking for Sally answers. You can look at mine. You can. It's not tripartite, but it's still interesting to see other ones. So, and I think most people that have gone through this are more than willing to share. And it's easier sometimes to ask outside of your close-knit circle. So,
Yes, I'm Sally Scripps. I'm in the Provost office. It's 315 Signers and extension 5178. I've got a pretty wide sample, both for both unions, all levels of review, and you should call me and let me know when you want to come by and look at them, and glad to share them with you.
But I just wanted to add one comment back to that question about who we asked for outside evaluators. I felt as though maybe that discussion wasn't entirely satisfying to the person who asked the question. And so I would suggest that you ask people in your own peer unit rather than yours there. Because, for instance, I would never have dreamed of asking someone I didn't know at all. But it's true, you're not supposed to ask somebody with whom you're really tight, you know. Usually my understanding is it's people who know your work, maybe through conferences or something. But it definitely can be a person in Alaska. So, but it's usually someone in academia. And so either Roxy's or Karen's point was very well taken. I think it should be someone who understands the promotion and tenure process. And at an institution maybe that's kind of similar to ours. But the final word I would say is check with people in your peer unit to find out where the one's there.
The other thing is everybody that is sitting at the front of this room is more than glad to answer your questions now or later. And so if you get in the midst of things later and you have further questions, give us a yell. We're always glad to help however we can. Like you said, it's not always, I'm not your department. I don't have exactly the same kind of a structure you do. I've seen a lot of them. So again, give us a yell, because I think these are your mentors, these are your friends, and your coworkers. Pull us in. We're glad to help.
And I just wanted to say one thing too, that some of the stuff we were talking about today might seem a bit discouraging, but it's a difficult process to be promoted and tenured and tenured. But we're your colleagues. We're all in this together, and generally the process is not as bad as I think that we made it seem today. That we're your colleagues. We want you to stick around. We want to work together and continue to work for the university. And we want you as our colleagues.
So the other thing, just thinking of the workshop part of it, are there templates? Do I have to reinvent the wheel here about, what does the folder actually have to look like? Does it need to be revised to, whatever? So where's that information from this website?
Yeah. The Provost homepage was everything specifically. If you're at UAF, you're at UAF. And you will give me a call at 2461. I have a 3-ring binder that you could stop by and pick up, to where whether it's your first year, you're going up for fourth year, you're trying to put together your tenure file, come see me. I will give you one of the binders so that you can immediately start putting your documentation in it. The sooner you put your documents in, the more professional it is when you stand for tenure. I am located at 309 Constitution Hall. I'm right above the bookstore. Thank you.
One thing I wanted to say, oh, I'm sorry. One thing I wanted to say to everybody, to go check your file in the dean's office, your personnel file in the dean's office every once in a while, that you don't need an appointment. Just go and show up and just see what's in there, because there are pretty, you know, the collective bargaining agreement has pretty defined rules and regulations of what can be in there, and sometimes those are not adhered to exactly, and so you can talk to Cindy about fixing that. Just show up once in a while. Everything that is put in your file, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy, but I believe this is still the case, everything that is put in your file you should be aware of.
Your academic record file,
Your academic record file.
be aware of what it is.
And if you're not aware of it, then it shouldn't be there. And if you haven't had a chance to respond to it, then it shouldn't be there. So go every once in a while, you know, I'd say every 6 months or so, not that I do that, but, you know, I did it particularly before putting in files for fourth year and promotion and tenure. Just go look at it. It takes you 5 minutes. It's really not much, but at least you're aware.
A follow-up on that, what sort of surprises might one find in there? I didn't know.
Hopefully not.
No, it's so that there are no surprises. But your career should never rely on something getting inadvertently put in a file that when you're going up for promotion and tenure. And let's say a student wrote a scathing note about how you behaved in class. The student was bad. Instead of that note really going nowhere or going to the supervisor file, so if something happens again for the year, the dean can say, that was a one-time incident, throw it away. Let's say you go and you're looking at your file and there's this scathing email from this student, how horrible you are. It happened 3 years ago. Your annual evaluation and your SOIs and everything written by your dean clearly do not reflect this scathing email. You would bring it to their attention, and they will remove it. Bring copy and look at it removed because it has to be dated, and it has to be, you have to know it's in your academic record file. Your dean can keep a file and the supervisory file with documentation up to 8 years old to use in the review process so that he knows what's going on in your life. Normally, even in those files, there's very few things that are negative for any faculty.
I'm going to add one more thing that I just remembered it had come up during my process. Sometimes the people that handle paperwork don't always do their job perfectly. And I was really, really worried about that with my file. So I had the secretary go with me and we hand delivered it and I waited for like a receipt. I was really worried. And lo and behold, that wasn't what I should have been worried about. Then my file was scanned incorrectly, and I didn't know that. You know, so then it went out to the first committee, and because it was an open meeting and I was there, someone said, "Where's the?" And I was like, "Can we talk? Can we talk?" Because they still told me I couldn't talk. I'm like, "No, that's there. All those sections were there. I made a good file." So just put it out there. Mistakes are made. Asking for a receipt when you drop it off, asking to have the electronic copy that's being sent out to all the committees sent to you so you can double check it. Not a bad idea. I didn't even think. I didn't even think to check that electronic file. Don't you just pick it up and drop it in the scanner? Might have fun.
Good advice.
Just one quick question. I did the fourth year review using the old activities reporting form, and I was wondering if we're going to now have to switch to the faculty 180 and have to redo everything for next year.
I had a nightmare about that last night. I was thinking, oh no, what am I going to say about this? Because I don't know what's happening.
I think that we are expected to go to the 180 system for normal evaluations, but I don't think they've got the system working up yet for fourth year review or P&T. But that's definitely going to be the eventual goal. But the way I look at it is it's inevitable. We're going to go to this electronic system. But then once you enter all your data into that electronic system, hopefully you can just transfer it from year to year. You just update from year to year. So once you get that worked out, I think ultimately it's going to be a good thing for us. And it's also inevitable. We're not going to be able to go back to pen and paper anymore. And think about it. You could put your whole career on a thumb drive.
Are there any final questions before we wrap up the workshop? If not, then let's thank our panelists, including ours.
Thank you all, and good luck.
Yep, wish you all luck. Did you stay in the room?
Yeah. And Thank you.